All right. Welcome, everybody. One thing, for you guys who are far away, in case you don't know me, I like to do things very interactive, and I throw goodies to the stuff. So if you are so far away, you are not going to get anything. So just move forward, get close. One thing, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Javier Garza. I'm a developer evangelist at Akamai. I'm Spanish, as you can hear from my accent, but I live in San Francisco for a few years now. I've been in Akamai for a really long time, and I work all the time with customers, so I know a lot what you do and what you go through. And one thing I like is to have fun. Okay, so I'm going to try to make from a session, something that is boring, a little bit of fun. Okay, so I need also your interaction so that you can give me some feedback. I wrote a book, I write a lot of blogs, and a speaker. Some people, they call me one-liner king because I do sometimes things that takes like maybe a lot of lines of code in just one line, just for fun. My motto is share what you learn and learn what you've done. And I believe in education, and actually I do volunteering in poor countries, to teach people about computers and stuff. So that's myself. I like challenging workouts. My commute to work is 30 miles with a bicycle. All right, so now that you know all about me, let me tell you what I have for you today. So I'm going to tell you a few things, how you can automate things in Akamai. Okay, that's going to be the first part. And the second thing, I'm going to show you how to do it, all right? I totally changed what I was going to present today, yesterday night, after talking with a few customers today. That's something that I often do. And sometimes I talk with somebody, and I totally change the talk on the fly as I talk with people, okay? So that's just me. So I like to make things relevant to the people I talk, all right? So first of all, I'm going to tell you a few things that you need to know of all the things you can get out of Akamai. Some of you may know a few of them, but I just want to ensure if you use some service, you get the most out of it. Then I'm going to tell you a few things in open source, and then a demo of how to automate it. I totally believe in demos. I think it's a great way to learn. And if you have, what was your name? Jesse? Jesse. Yeah, so if I say, Jesse, you have an awesome app, can you show me what it does or how it works? He's not going to read me probably the user guide or a flyer that shows what they have, but he's going to tell me probably, what he thinks is the best or the most important thing from the app, and then show me, the things that he thinks are more important for me, okay? So that's what I'm going to try to do today, right? So don't waste your time in slides. So the first thing is how to build amazing apps at a scale. How many of you build apps that are used for more than 1 million people? All right. So let me see if I can get some of the stickers. All right. One for you. Who was another one? Okay. Cool. So one of the things, I wrote a series of blogs for DevOps.com. It's a magazine, an online magazine that is very popular in the US, about how you can optimize apps or websites or anything in general. And the most important thing is that you have to think all the different areas that your app uses. One is the front end. There are many things, tons of things that you can do in front end, like the user interface, accessibility, the performance, network awareness and security on the back end and the network. I'm not going to repeat this because we don't have time today. But if you go to this, I'm going to post the slides in GitHub, and I'm going to do it in front of you, so you can believe me. And then you can go there and read all the things in detail. But basically, whenever you want to optimize something, ensure you do it in all the areas, not just the ones that you touch yourself. You have to go on the network side, on the user side, and everything. The other thing is, if you want to get the most out of Akamai, you need to know also everything that Akamai can do for you. And Akamai has services that run Similar to what we see with the apps, the front end, back end, and network, Akamai can run things at the origin side on your servers that you control. The many things that we can do at the edge, that's the most power that we have. We have reverse proxies that they can do many things at the edge. Probably you only do less than 10% of the things they can do. And then there are certain things that Akamai has that run on the device. That's what I call client side. So I'm just going to tell you the things that are possible, so to give you some ideas of the things you can automate, all right? Let's start with things at the origin. For example, one thing that, how many of you know that you can run an Akamai geolocation database on your clusters, on your infrastructure, called Edgescape? Okay. Bob knows, Okay, all right. So Edgescape is basically a geolocation database. It's super cool because you can get IP, like for example, geolocation, the city, and zip code, and many other things from the IP, based on the IP of the people who are visiting the app. Why this is important? You can get it even if you don't use Akamai, because it's something that you get at the origin. The cool thing of this is that you can get geolocation information from devices that they don't share the geolocation information using the mobile APIs. So for example, if in my app, say, Jesse's app, I don't allow them to use geolocation, like location services, still with the Edgescape, you can see where I'm coming from, right? So that's kind of cool. And you don't need Akamai for that. It's a database that you can install on your servers. Edge control, you can control the cache on the Akamai servers from your servers, from Apache, WordPress, whatever you use, by using control headers. Cache tags, it's another thing you can do on your servers. You can inject headers to, when you want to purge content, do it in groups that make sense for you. And for example, ESI code, things that you can add to your content, in your CMS. For example, you can inject ESI code, or in the future, you can create JavaScript and deploy it on Akamai. But again, ESI code is mostly things that you do on your side, on the origin. All these things are things that interact with Akamai, but you're doing on your servers you control. So the next thing is things that you can do at the edge. One thing that many people don't know is you can tie out a website that, for example, uses Heroku to get something, DigitalOcean to do another part of the app, then AWS for the database or whatever. And you can tie them in Akamai super easy with a configuration that just hides everything and represents something unified to the end user. And in fact, how many of you have done or have interacted with Launchpad? This thing I have my t-shirt on? OK. So let me see again. All right. Let's see if I can go that far. Oh, wow. Well, you see, you have to be close by. These are not lining up. Anyway, so the Launchpad, is an app that we did ourselves from scratch. So we use many cloud providers. And one of the problems that we face is, for example, we were limited to the platforms that we use, right? For example, for some platforms, we use OpenEdX through a hosted solution. And when you clicked on a course and enroll in a course, you had a page that listed something else, and then you have to click again to start the course. And I say, that's a pain, to have to click 3 times to get started. So we call the company who did the platform and say, can we go from this to this? Oh, no, this is OpenEdX, it will take a while to change the code and everything. Say, don't worry. We make at the edge, we match on the page that we wanted, and we send the user when they click next to the next one. Nobody noticed. They click the same buttons and everything. But in the back end, we change the workflow of an infrastructure that we don't control. Things, for example, that you can do is you can manipulate business logic without writing code. And in that case, for example, what I have is anything that is, for example, cookies. I can create a logic in Akamai that sets a cookie, and I can even put something that does something if the cookie exists without having to write any code on my servers. And even if the page is cached, the cookie will still be set. and I don't have any load on my servers from that, so it's cool. We have package ready to run. I think they call it cloudlets. You can capture telemetry with Akamai, and in fact, we have many different ways of doing it. For example, one is called Impulse. You turn this thing on, and Akamai will inject the beacon to collect the telemetry and then send it to the Akamai backend services who makes the reports and stuff. And the other thing that is very useful is data streams, something you guys heard about it. We also, that's a server-side generated telemetry, which means you can run it in devices that they don't run JavaScript, which is pretty cool too. And again, you can run code on Akamai, with ESI, edge workers, and with Akamai metadata. So that's basically all the things you can do at the edge. That's the most power of Akamai, right? We have a document that is, I think, 100-something pages long that explains everything you can do. And I don't believe anybody except Bob has read that document. It's called Edge Suite Configuration Guide. But anyway, you can authenticate things at the edge, which will save you a lot of money. For example, I did a project with a large customer that when I did it, they had 11 billion API requests per day. They were all authenticated requests with a key. And they had, I believe, 32 Azure clusters who handled the authentication. And by implementing a little bit of authentication on the Akamai side, didn't cost them anything extra. They went from 32 clusters to 8 clusters. And 4 of them were on standby. Okay, so yes, if you know what it is, you can pay in the same money, you can save a lot of money on other places. We have SDKs. For example, mobile SDK, you can plug something that Akamai gives you, and it will improve the mobile communications on the mobile platforms. And media players, we have ready media. Anyway, all in all, you can do Akamai everywhere. If you don't use it, you're paying, but you could get more, right? So let's go quickly to the demo. So I still have a lot of time for the demo, which is great. These are the tools I'm going to show you in the demo. They are open source tools, don't cost anything. You can download it in those places. The Akamai CLI is something that Akamai implemented. And we have 10+ packages to do certain things. CLI, in case you guys don't know, is basically a wrapper for APIs. So you can consume Akamai APIs, or certain of them, when we have a package, without having to write code in Python and Go or PHP or whatever. GitHub is, everybody knows Git and GitHub. I don't have to do it. Source control. Curl is a command line interface to request pages. It's used usually for testing. It's very useful for creating scripts that verify the web page returns something that you're expecting, right? JQ is a command line tool to manipulate JSON format. For example, it's very useful I use it a lot for getting big JSON and replacing specific values, or from combining many JSON files into one, which is very useful for what I'm going to show you today, right? And then Jenkins is a open source CI/CD tool that allows you to automate stuff. All right, so this is the demo. This is the only thing. This is the GitHub repo that I put everything. Some things are not there yet because this is live, and it will be done at the end of this demo, right? In case you don't know, the Akamai contrib repo, it's a contributions repo that we have. So in Akamai now we have 2. GitHub.com/Akamai, which is things created by Akamai. And contrib is created by anybody from the community. So if you want, and I'm a GitHub admin in Akamai, you can tell me, I have this super cool thing that I want to share with everybody. Let me know. I can create a repo for you, and you can share it with everybody, right? So the slides, they all will be shared. But if you remember, property-automation-open source, that's where you can get everything. So that's it. We are not going to do QA yet, so let me stop. I'm going to open a web browser. Actually, let me stop the PowerPoint. Otherwise, you're not going to see my web browser. Cool. Okay. Can you guys see from there? So this is the GitHub repo that basically explains, again, the tools that I just explained, and the script of what I'm going to do. So the demo that I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to do, we have 20 minutes to see, I love challenges, by the way. So the challenge is if I can automate, create a framework that you can use from scratch to automate anything in Akamai. It could be security APIs, Akamai configurations, or anything, right? So what I'm going to do is, like a generic thing that you can use it for anything without writing code and with the minimum lines of code possible. So we are going to use bash script, which is something that is very common if you use Jenkins and stuff. And let me explain you the concept. The concept is we are going to use tools in Akamai. For example, in this case, we are going to focus on properties, like a website. And I'm going to first create a template that we are going to use as a skeleton for anything we are going to do going forward. Then the second thing we are going to do is we are going to build a library of different functionality, that is independent. And then I'm going to show you how easy it is to create the skeleton and create properties with all the features, all the different features that we want to build a full set of functionality, right? You guys ready? If you want, you can follow up with me. All right. So the only thing you need to do this is a web browser. So I'm going to open actually a new tab here. I'm going to go to control.akamai.com. I'm going to use the Launchpad account so that you can see anybody can do this with any accounts. This is the account that we were trying on the Launchpad. So I'm going to, just click Create Property. And put So we are going to use Property Manager only to generate JSON. Okay, we are not going to do anything with it. So, but it's a good. So, for example, I'm going to delete this thing. So, I'm going to delete everything. And what else we have here? Caching, let's say I'm going to say my default configs that I want will be by default, caching for, let's say, 5 minutes. And I don't need anything else, so I'm going to delete everything else here. All right. So I think this is basically the most basic configuration you can create. Of course, I'm going to put This doesn't even have to exist. Going to say origin host name and incoming header. Okay, so I just created the skeleton that I need to create any configurations. So what I'm going to do now is I go here and I say view JSON. And I can either copy and paste or I can download it if I want. So let me copy it so you can see better. And then I'm going to go to a directory here I'm going to create. Can you see good from the back? Yes? If not, you should move closer, okay? All right, so I paste the code. And one thing that you need to know is the Akamai properties at the beginning, they have this code that it's like a few tags that specify the characteristics or the ID of the property. since I'm going to make a template, I don't need those because it's going to be a generic thing. This will be generated on the fly. So these are exactly the rules that you need for a skeleton for any configuration, all right? So I'm going to save the file. Done. So the next thing that we need is, let me go back to my GitHub repo. The next thing that we do is we need to create a specific functionality to do certain things. So for example, one thing that is common is gzip. If your origin sends the content in gzip, you want Akamai also to send the gzip. And you may want, if, for example, you have an origin server that does not gzip, you want Akamai to gzip it. So I'm going to create, I'm going to use Property Manager to create that functionality. So I say add rule, I'm going to call it gzip. And I'm going to say, so what do you usually want to gzip? Only text HTML. You don't want to gzip binaries. So I say, if the content type is text HTML, you're going to insert this functionality that basically, I'm going to say always gzip, even if the origin does not gzip, which, for example, some cloud storages, they don't gzip content, but you always wanted to send the gzip to clients, all right? So I don't even need to save. What I'm interested in is into the rule JSON. So I'm going to copy the code here, and I just make the first item on my library. So I'm going to call it I paste. All right? So I have already two things. So what else we are going to do? Let's create, for example, a rule for robots. So I cannot control my platform, and I want them to disallow some certain spider scripts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it at the edge, all right? So I will say a match for the path. Oh, sorry. Anybody know what robots.txt is? Yeah? Okay, cool. It's basically you can control good behaved bots if they should index some content or not. I have already let me show you an example. So this is the JSON. So basically, I construct a response that basically sends user agent disallow. All right. So I'm kind of lazy, so I'm going to copy and paste. So there is a tag called construct response, which is super useful. How many of you know about construct response, apart from Bob? A few of you. So this is super cool. Allows Akamai to do many things, like, for example, if your APIs are down, you can still, even not having a failover, return a JSON or something, because you can put whatever you want here. All right. Oh, I didn't need to say it. So I'm going to copy the rule, and I'm going to save it again in a file. Okay, so now we have already all the things that we need. So we check here. We have a template and two other things. I could create more, but I can tell you, for example, here in GitHub, I have several ones. So for example, we have this one that basically generates a dynamic debugging page. So if somebody has an error, you can tell them, go to my website /debug, and it will print out some information like what is your IP, what server you are connected, what is the latency, and so on. So I think that's kind of useful. So I'm going to actually be even more lazy and just do a wget. So I have this one. And let me see if I want something else from here. Maybe a redirect. All right. So I just built a library with, my skeleton and 4 different functionality that I can plug in and out whenever I want. So now the next step is how we create our framework. So I'm going to create the framework with least amount of lines as possible. And I'm going to do it in Bash and very basic, no checking or anything, just for demo purposes here. So for example, first of all, I'm going to create a configuration file that is going to set all the different variables that I want for my code to run, so I can change it on the fly, give parameters, use with CI/CD tools, and don't have to update my code. So I created this simple configuration file, which basically tells where are my credentials stored, which section from my credentials should I use to do the API calls, how I want to call my config file, so I'm going to call it 5. My edge host name, what should it be? So it will be my config file.web.astronaut.training.sui.net. My origin, the group ID and the contract ID, there's things that they are dynamically generated depending on where you run it. So I just run an API call to get those values. And you can see I use JQ to get the value. So for example, if I take this command and I run it on the shell, oh, sorry, didn't put the variable yet. So it's asking for this one. I put it in the beginning so you can see it better from the end. This should give me the group ID, you see? So that's a way that you can really use. I didn't use Python. This is super easy to do in Python, but you can do it in the shell with Bash too. So you can do these things to collect all the information. So in this case, I get the contract, the group IDs, and I configure the product, rules.json, etc., some configurations. And here in my snippet list, I tell them what kind of things I want them to put together, right? So in this case, I have my rules and robots.txt. So let's see the code that you need to create a file and basically add robots.txt. So I only need, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Well, actually, I only need 3 lines of code to create a configuration that has robots.txt. If I want to have more things, just not robots.txt, I could just change my configuration and say add robots, add gzip, and what else I have here? Redirects. Let me see. Redirect, okay, singular. All right, so now I have this configuration. I'm going to create the skeleton plus these 3 things. All right, so let's see how will work. We're going with time, perfect. Let me explain you the code. So the first thing, source, what it does is loads my configuration files and variables, so it just reads the file. So I will have, although my variables are in a different file, I'm going to read it here. So it's very simple. Here, what I do is I do a loop. Actually, let me put word wrap so you can see better. Can you see good from the end, or should I make it bigger? Is it good? If not, you can always move back. All right. So what I do here is, this is the cool thing, is I do a loop, and for all the items in my snippet list, which in this case, I have 3 items, robots, gzip, and redirect, you can see. What I do is I do a JQ, and with this format, I'm appending a rule to the existing list of rules, right? And this command here, what it does is basically JSON minimize the file. So if I run, let me show it to you in one of them. For example, if I say cat robots GQ, you can see it looks all nice. And if I do like this, it's in one line. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. So basically what I do is append, whatever's inside this file as the last rule in my config. And then I send the output. This is my original, is my template, my skeleton, and I send the output to a file. And after this, what I do is I override my original, my template, with the rule I just created. So I go again and add another file, another file. In this way, with one line of code, I can add 100 functionality really easy. Okay? So let me run it for you so you can see. So I call it, I think, rules.json. Let me see if I have. Yep. So let me, base file is property template.json. Let me ensure that it call it like this. Yep. All right. So now it should work. If not, it's a demo. Of course, we can fix it. OK, so let me copy the command. I'm going to do it one by one. So first, I'm going to do the source, so you can see. Of course, they're not here. All right, so I have my files. So if I do source, they should go on my shell. And let me do the command set, which prints all the variables on the shell. And I'm going to grep for mine. And you can see, so it read the file. So I have all my values here. So I should be able to run the commands. I'm going to run it first one by one so you can see how they work. And then we'll put it in a script and run the script. All right? So let's check this one. This one, what it does, it adds all the snippets. So if we go back to my shell, you can see I have 3 on my list. And in property template, for example, robots, you can see there is nothing, right? So there is nothing yet. So now we are going to run the command and just copying and pasting the one line. And let me repeat the grep command, and you can see it's added. So it's super easy. With one line of code, you can add as many functionalities as you do. And the only thing that you need to change on my code now will be the recipe, right? The recipe here. What ingredients do I want to put on my build template? You can do this super easy with Kubernetes, with Jenkins, with whatever you want. This is, the important thing here is I want to give you the idea of how to do it, okay? The tool is your choice. So now, the next thing you need to do in Akamai is I have already the base rules with all the things that I want. And if I do cat rules.json, and I do JQ, so you can see, well, let me remove the list so you can see color. You can see here's the file that has everything. See the gzip. We see the robots. We see the So all the things that we configured, right? And here the construct response. All right, so now we are going to run just single command, CLI, to create the configuration from scratch. And this is the command here. It's just a property CLI. So I'm going to, let me type it on the top so you can see it better. Let's see if it works. So while this runs, let me explain you all the parameters that I gave. So this is the configuration when I have my credentials, the section that tells the credentials. The create tells to create a new config. This is the name of my configuration. Then I tell them to send the forward host name to the origin. This is the host name that I'm tying to my configuration. This is the edge host name. That is the DNS entry that points to Akamai. This is the origin host name that I'm using. That is all the values that we have in the config file. The group, the contract, the product, and the JSON rules that I just generated a moment with that loop. All right? And then I create also a new CP code that I call it the same as my configuration so that when I go to the Luna and see the reports, I can see the information, the reports on the same name as the host name. All right, let's see. It was a little bit slow. I guess many people are doing labs with the same APIs. All right, but it's getting there. So already created my version 1. And you can see it's creating the host name, updating the host names and the property. I'm done. It took 1 minute. I just created a config with a recipe with 4 or 5 different things. So I'm going to do another line to activate it in staging. So I send it. And it will take maybe a few more seconds to activate it. So you can see now it's looking for the config. It's showing any warnings that you have. And now it's making an API request to activate the config in staging. So, all right. So it's already activating. So if you activate things with the CLI loops every 30 seconds until the configuration is active. But once you see the waiting 30 seconds, it's already going to the network. So you're fine to control. All right? And the last thing you want to do is I want to now add the rules.json into GitHub so that I can keep control internally of the changes I'm doing. So you just need to add this, I would say, add my rules, committed, saying I added these snippets to this file, and then git push origin master, boom. So you have, with 4 lines of code, you automate creating configurations and storing the code in github.com. All right? So how it looks like if you want to, instead of create, use an existing configuration. So it's very, very similar. The only thing that you have to do is instead of saying, using the property command, you just say property update, the name of the config you want to update, and the file with the rules. So it's exactly the same. I only have to edit this one line, and I can use my recipe for editing also configuration files. So now you have a framework to create files, any file with anything that you want, and also to edit files with anything that you want, okay? So we did it in less than 20 minutes. So now you can go and automate everything that you like. The next step will be to add it into Jenkins. So I have, I think, Jenkins here. But I think we only have 30 seconds left, so I'm not going to have time to do it. But there are many tutorials in Jenkins that explain you how you can create a workflow and run a shell script that we just created, right? So that's it. The last thing I have to do is copy the slide and put it in GitHub. So while you ask questions, I'm going to do that, okay? Any questions? Go ahead.
Property to get created so quickly. Usually whenever you create a brand new property, it takes a few minutes to finish being created. How'd that happen so fast?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, usually when you create a brand new property with host names, it takes longer than that to actually create the property. Like you're waiting for Akamai to finish.
Yeah. So
How did that happen so fast?
I just stopped the command. So the first time you activate a property in staging, it takes around 10, 15 minutes. subsequent activations takes around 3 minutes.
Right.
In production, it's a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But the CLI, it will sleep in a loop and check every 30 seconds if the property has activated.
Okay.
But at that time, you can stop the CLI and it's going to
Oh, I got you.
activation.
So it wasn't actually finished yet. You were just moving on.
Yeah.
Got it.
And yeah, I'm done. Yeah. Oh, remember to rate the session in the app. So while you do that, I'm going to save the PowerPoint into a PDF and upload it to GitHub. And my video just went, sorry, moved my computer a little bit. Can you put the video back? I see it in the monitor here. Well.
Brian, back on screen, please.
Okay, thank you. So let me be transparent. So I'm going to export this to a PDF. So I'm going to select my GitHub repo. All right, so now it should be there. Okay, so you can see I have the creation scripts, all the JSON files that I have, and everything. So now the only thing I need to do is check them in. So I'm going to run, well, I think I have it here, the command. I'm going to add everything. Say add in slides and demo, push, and that's it. So if we go back to GitHub and refresh, there we have. We have everything, all the scripts and all the framework and the PDF, all right? Cool, thank you.